disciplining someone out of love versus disciplining somebody out of anger, right? Like if you're supporting and encouraging and coaching someone, that's going to feel a lot better than being berated or micromanaged or nitpicked.
This is the Full Stack Sales Pro.
What up, Full Stack crew? I hope, as always, that this podcast finds you and you're just having an amazing day whenever you're listening. If it's morning, noon, night, it doesn't matter. We're just excited that you are here. We're grateful for you. And we have an absolutely amazing show. We're going to get into not hot topics, but we're going to get into it today. And we're going to have some really amazing conversations with our guest today, Kelsey O'Neill. She's an absolute legend. I actually met her through my wife, and they had gotten connected before. And so then we got connected, and then we were actually a part of a lot of the same circles. So it was just a really cool thing. But she has such a unique perspective on the industry at large, but just also just what we're going to talk about today, just kind of getting into the nitty gritty about females being in the industry and what that looks like, and just all of it. So anyways, thank you, Kelsey. Welcome to the show. First of all, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Josh. I'm excited to be here. This is definitely an honor. I've heard nothing but incredible things about your sales skills. So to be on the show here is a privilege.
Well, your legend precedes you, obviously, and I've heard just amazing things, and even getting to hang with you and kick it with you a little bit, online has just been really cool to just see how you think about it and your perspective on it. So thank you again. Why don't we do this? Why don't we start? I love starting with intros and just kind of your backstory of how you even got into the sales space and what has led you to being where you're at today. Why don't we start there, and then we'll kind of get into it more.
Yeah, absolutely. So I have kind of a unique story in the sense that, to make a long story short, I actually got started out of college after graduating with a business degree, ended up going into full-time ministry with my husband. And we were both full-time fundraisers working for ministries. And, fundraising at the time, I did not think of it being sales. In hindsight, I'm like, you're selling something not even tangible, right? You're selling the dream, you're selling the vision, and enrolling people into that emotion. I loved fundraising. It was so much fun. And the rest of the people in our ministry environment, they didn't love it. They all were like, oh gosh, we got to go do this thing. And I was out there just having a great time. So that was the first thing that got me into it. And then from there, moved into fundraising training, trained teams of fundraisers to hit their goals. And then from there, I transitioned into the online marketing world, started an ad agency like everyone and their mom did. And enjoyed learning that, enjoyed learning marketing. But when it came down to, at the end of the day, I was looking at my marketing agency and was like, you know what? The part that I love is being on the phone, not really that into lead generation. Like, it's easier to just go do sales for other people. So I went and got into, doing kind of that contractor role, high ticket sales. And as I got into that space, it was so much fun. Like, the flexibility is great. The high, of course, of closing a deal. Yeah. And I think what I love the most is just the everyday learning, right? Like, it's just a constant challenge to improve. But as I got into the space, the very first team that I was on was all women, and I loved it. But then moving on from that team, unfortunately, there was just too many issues with fulfillment and whatnot. So I ended up moving on. And every other team that I was on past that was almost 100% men. Like, I was maybe one of two women on the team. And I was raised by my dad, so that never has really bothered me. Like, I love hanging with the guys. But at the same time, I'm looking around and I'm like, okay, where are the women to learn from? And who can I be friends with? Like, who can I, hop on Zoom with and text back and forth and whatnot? So I started the Sales Queen Community Facebook group out of, honestly, a need for friends, and was like, hey, there doesn't seem to be any community here. No intention of ever being the guru or the coach or anything like that. That's actually the intention of the community from my view, was like, all right, Sales Queen community, we're all sales queens. and let's come into this room together and really be able to iron sharpen iron, contribute and all kind of coach and mentor each other. So that's still my vision for it, but it took off really quickly. We've got about 1,000 women in there now,
Wow.
about a year and a half later. And that's with no ads or really intention on my part. It just naturally grows with people being added. And it's a really an honor and a privilege to have gotten to be kind of put into that place of leadership now where I can facilitate conversations like this.
Amazing. And what is it that you're doing right now? Do you just mainly manage that, or are you still, tell them, are you still closing, helping?
Yeah, great question. So I was closing for a while. I've done a lot of event sales. I love that, actually, virtual events. So that's always a good time. Do that on a contract basis. But I've been doing recruiting for about a year and a half now. So out of the Sales Queen Sisterhood, I started having all these business owners come to me saying, hey, we want to hire women to join our team. Like, we heard you know some. So that's how the recruiting agency was born. So right now, that's where I spend most of my time closing deals for my own company. And then, like I said, doing the virtual events, but also doing really the transition and focus moving forward is going to be more alongside of coaching. We've got our Sales Queen Academy for women who are learning sales, especially the skill of social selling, like selling in the DMs. And then moving forward, we're working on a really fun project that is like all my passions coming together called The Wealthy Saleswoman. So we're going to be actually combining sales coaching, the ability to make more income, with financial coaching, the ability to keep that income. And then my friend Tatiana is coming in as a partner and teaching business credit. So we're going to like bring it all together and really help women make some money. So that's
Love
my
that.
passion project right now.
I love that. Okay. So let's get into this. You created something that now obviously makes you money, gives you impact. You have a huge reach. I mean, a massive reach, a worldwide reach inside of this community. Why did you create it? Let's get into that. What was it that you were feeling? Because the first thing that you got into was an all team of women closing, which I'll be honest with you, I very rarely hear of.
Yeah, it's rare for sure.
It's very rare. And so, I mean, was that a good experience? Did you like it to where it was only women, or do you like it to where it's both?
Yeah, that's a good question. It's tough. Like, of course, I think that you could say the same thing, right? Like a guy with or a day with the guys is good for your soul. I love hanging out in a group of girls. I was in a sorority in college. There were a lot of pros in the sense that we were all close friends, like not just on the team, but we would talk afterwards and whatnot. Not that you can't have those friendships, between the two guys and girls, but it's just a little different, especially, I'm married. It's not like I'm trying to chat up all the guys on the sales team after work. Right. So just the camaraderie and friendship, I think, made showing up to work really fun. And yeah, it was great. But I actually really enjoyed being on a team with men too, because there was just so much more of a breadth of knowledge and just a difference, right? Getting to hear how different people close deals. That's always been one of my favorite things to do, is to listen to other people's calls and pick up on little nuances that they have. So that is a tough question to answer, but I really think that's why it's important for sales teams to be balanced and to not be all women or all men, because there is so much that we can all bring to the table. And, women, especially, like we've got I'm going to make a lot of generalities in this conversation.
No, you're good. You're good.
No one messaged me a hate message later, but in general, women tend to be more nurturing, more relational. Like, we've been training for that from birth. We've culturally been raised to be more in tune emotionally. And I'm a believer that men and women were made differently. So we have different giftings. And then men, you guys have your gifts that you bring to the table, oftentimes more assertive, typically more competitive, look at things a little bit more analytically, right? And so I think that both have a ton of benefits they can bring to the table. Like, men typically, again, being a little bit more of like logical, here's the analytical flow of a sales call, like let's break it down into a framework. Whereas typically women are not quite as interested in the framework, and we want to feel it out, right? Like, I want to listen to the tonality, see the body language if it's on camera, and really just like tap into the emotional energy of the person with that feminine intuition, so to speak. to see where we're at in the conversation, and see how I can best serve that person. So yeah, that's my thoughts on that. And then as far as the why of starting the group, like I said, just really that desire for friendship and the desire to see women really sharpening each other and pouring into each other, because there just hasn't been that in the space, at least in the high ticket world.
Okay, so perfect. So why do you believe, because I've already asked this question, so I don't want any hate mail coming to me either. I've actually already asked this question. We've already had this conversation, which is why I was like, oh my God, we should talk about this on the real, because if we're talking about it behind closed doors, then most of the time you need to talk about it and out in the open in the public as well. Why do you believe this is a male dominant driven industry?
Yeah. So like I shared with you, how this happened was Josh Voxered me and I sent him back like 15-minute answers, and it was like,
it was
all right,
awesome.
This clearly needs to be a longer conversation. But yeah, so like I said, number one, women and men are different. And so how you market to men and women are different. So I think even just backing it way up with sales as a whole and the way that we're raised, again, like men are treated differently as boys. They're encouraged to take risk, whereas girls are really focused on being relational, and we're, oh, be careful, honey, don't do that, And so just even from childhood, we're conditioned differently. And so sales is never something that, outside of like being a realtor or joining a network marketing company, sales is not something that's ever been a feminine career where, what do you want to be when you grow up? Like, I want to sell software, or I want to sell cars. And I know that's kind of true for guys too, but still there's just not that natural inclination, especially when you look at the fact that sales as a career is one of risk, right? Most jobs are commission. And that element of risk is just not something that a lot of women are as comfortable with as men. So I think that contributes to it. But yeah, some of the factors that just keep women out of the game, I think, are that misinformation around sales as a whole. It blows my mind how many times still, like, I'm so immersed in this world that I think everyone gets now that sales is great and that we've moved past that sometimes. But when I'm having conversations with the women in my neighborhood and I share what I do, or I talk to them about their careers, a lot of time they'll be like, oh yeah, I wish I could do something like that. Like, working remote or, making more money. That sounds great. Having flexibility. That sounds great. But then when I ask them about it to try to have the conversation go further, they're definitely scared of the risk of it, of like, oh, okay, 100% commission, not sure about that. And then they are just still viewing sales as like being very icky. Like the response I always get is like, well, maybe if I like really, really loved it. And so they don't really see it as serving. Whereas, I'm a big believer that you have to be able to connect your mission and purpose to it. But like, I can connect my mission and purpose of helping people create financial freedom to about 30 different offers, right? Like, I can see how that lines up with so many different offers to sell. And so regardless of what I'm selling, I'll be able to find the way that it is serving and helping solve a person's problem. And women just don't view it that way. So from a huge cultural perspective, we need to be just really teaching women that sales is something that is of service. And to go back to the marketing component of it, when you think about marketing the different coaching programs in the high ticket space, a lot of the messaging is it's just masculine messaging, right? Because men are the ones making the ads. So it's a little bit more like, hey, you can come in here, you can crush it, you can make 10K a month, you can have location freedom, you can, you're going to be competitive, you can learn to be the best. Like, women don't resonate with that quite as much. Not that women don't want to make money or don't want location freedom, but we're probably going to be more likely to be drawn to messaging that's like, hey, do you want a career where you can literally change people's lives every day and you can serve them, you can help them solve their problems, where you might be able to have flexibility to stay, home with your family part-time. You might be able to, make it more money so that your husband can change his job. Like, just the way that women think, it's a little bit more others centered, not that men aren't, but typically, especially older women that have families, they're focused on things like that. That's factoring into their job choices a lot more than just making a lot of money or being location independent. So I do think that that's a factor.
Yeah. I mean, this is really good. I'm reading this book right now called Why She Buys.
Ooh.
And it is really, really good. And they touch on this about how I guess they can back it up statistically, but I mean, hell, I mean, you could back up everything with a statistic. I mean,
Right.
you can lie with statistics. There's a whole book on lying with statistics. But the point is that what they have said is that they have found that, like what you just said, to your point, men are the ones marketing it, but women are the ones who are actually buying. And they figured
Mm-hmm.
this out because they just said they started asking men a bunch of random questions, for this point, what type of milk do you have in your thing? What do
Yeah.
you have going on here? And so they're constantly asking these type of thoughts and questions, and men never knew. They never had the answers to it because
Mm-hmm.
they are not the ones actually buying. Even when
Mm-hmm.
you're talking about programs or selling coaching things, it's always, at least in my case, a spousal objection. I very rarely have to deal with the woman having a spousal objection as much as I have the man having to have a
Mm-hmm.
spousal objection. Does that make
Yeah.
sense?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Totally.
And
That
and
was one of the, sorry, go ahead.
no, please go.
I was just going to say that's one of the things that I think makes the financial coaching component important too, because that's what we realized early on in marriage. Like I thought growing up, oh yeah, men, like they manage the money. But then we realized, oh, I'm the one doing all the spending.
Yep. Yep. And you're seeing that a lot to where um it's making me ask the question because like we did like a push, I don't know how long ago when we were hiring new AEs, and I think I got one female applicant out of like 30 or 40, and we just did, and our talent
Mm-hmm.
acquisition specialist is she's a female. She crushes, she's so good at her job, and we just got one. And I asked her, I said, where are all the females? I was like, I mean, I understand this is a male dominant industry. Being in the music industry before, it's like that's kind of male driven in the producer, side of production things. And I get that, but I was like, where else is this? Because in my mind, we've had so many clients that were females. I've seen
Mm-hmm.
so many, as the seems trendy, like the boss lady thing is going on right
Yeah.
now, and I'm like,
Right.
wait, I thought we were past this. Like, I thought
Right.
like this is, and the more and more I dive into it, like we haven't even scratched the surface.
Oh
Like,
no. Yeah.
like, and it's so vast. What would it take as a female? Because I mean, you're like, I would literally go work for you. That's how good you are at what you're doing. And I would feel comfortable learning from you. And it's this exact same, I would hire you in a heartbeat. You already know that. If you weren't already crushing, I would beg you to come and hang out with us because you're awesome. But what is it going to take in your mind, or the next steps to seeing this space and this industry be a place where females feel confident coming in
Mm-hmm.
and doing the job the same way, that a male could do it?
Yeah. So it's a tough question, but I do think so, just from a really practical standpoint, and I know that this is not ideal for a lot of companies, but I think having a little bit more of options as far as being flexibility. So when I first got into this area about 3-4 years ago, I saw a lot more opportunity for part-time sales reps. And I have really seen that go down. And I definitely understand from a company standpoint, like having somebody 100% committed to, 40 hours a week. Like I get that that's appealing. There's less cost involved with having one employee than there is two, right? But from just a perspective on how can we get more women involved, I mean, there are so many women like your amazing wife, right,
Mm.
who they want to be focused on growing a family and nurturing children, but they're amazing. They're so smart. They're educated. They're well spoken. They're brilliant. They're ambitious. And it's just like, okay, well, if I could find something where I could work 20 hours a week and really give that 100% while I'm there in that 20 hours, but still have some time to take my kids to the pool in the afternoon, then that would be a win. And so the opportunities that are part time are definitely the ones that the women in my group they're like jumping all over. They're like, oh yes, please. I want to do that immediately. And that allows the company, the business owner, to hire out of a larger pool of talent as well. So I know it's not always the most practical thing from the business owner's standpoint, but I do think that it really gives you more of a talent pool. And I think in a lot of ways, someone who's working part-time and can give like 100% during those 20 hours is better than somebody who's working, burnt out at 40 to 60 hours a week. And yeah, sure, they're focused, but like if they are operating out of less energy, then they're not going to get the same results. So yeah, I think that that's a big factor. And then again, looking at our language, like language is so important. And it's even hard for me to answer the question because like I said, I grew up with my dad. I'm definitely a more masculine woman. I've had to learn how to tap into my feminine energy a bit more. So I might hear your messaging and be like, oh yeah, cool. Like that resonates. I'm down. Mm-hmm. But majority of women are hearing the marketing messaging and they're reading the job descriptions that are looking for competitive, aggressive, assertive, driven A players who want to kill it and crush it, like all of that language. That's not the language of being heart-centered and service-oriented and problem solving and just a little bit softer, right? Like a little bit more softer, open-hearted, kind of infusing the fun in it too, right? Like to a guy that might sound like a good time, that competitive energy where you played on a sports team, right? Where you're like, yeah, I want to be on a sales team where we have all this competition. But for women, our experience of competition was girls being bitchy to each other. Like, not as many women had a positive experience with competition. So I think changing the language on how we market coaching programs and how we post job postings definitely makes a big difference. That's probably the first place to start.
Okay. So I'm going to my wife. So, I already know, like, you don't play around with, like, I grew up I was raised by extremely, strong women presence in my life. I mean, my great grandmother who passed at 105 was still driving us around at 97. Like it was nothing, playing pinochle and bridge 3 times a week, taking us to our dentist appointments when my parents were working their tails off. So it's like, I just grew up around strong women, but I'm going to play devil's advocate. You got a sales culture where they want it to be competitive. I mean, there are times like I love it when someone comes on and they are an ex-athlete, not because we're going to go have some softball team league, but because they understand the ideas and the principles of what someone who was in sports, you know what I mean? What that means to be on a team and what it means to compete, but it to be a healthy competition, right? So when you want that culture, but you change up your messaging so that you open up the space for more females to come in, are we catfishing them then at that point? Because we want them to come, but we still want to cultivate this culture over here.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. And yeah, so it's a tough question to answer. I think that you want to communicate the competition piece of it, right? But what's competition really about? It's about being the best, right? It's about being able to cultivate a skill, to be a high performer. And again, but not for the ego. And not that all men are about the ego, but I'm just saying.
Good chunk of them are.
Competition for the sake of ego and winning versus competition for the sake of being the best that you can be for personal like reward and the best ability to serve other people. So again, generalization, there are plenty of egotistical women, but I think that the competition is not bad at all. I mean, think about like women are involved in competition, but it's the dance companies, right? Like the cheerleaders, good Lord, the cheerleaders in my high school, they were competitive as heck. Like they had like 5 state championships and they were not there to play. So it's not necessarily about that, but showing that team component of like, we're all in it to win it because we want to be the best. We want to be able to serve and we want to inspire each other to be better. It's just that underlying tone that's so subtle and it's hard to even articulate. It's like the energy that you feel of just like, maybe not a perfect analogy, but like disciplining someone out of love versus disciplining somebody out of anger, right? Like if you're supporting and encouraging and coaching someone, that's going to feel a lot better than being berated or micromanaged or nitpicked. So at the end of the day, you could say the same thing, you could say the same words, but it's about how it actually feels. And so, I don't think you should like lose the competitive messaging. Let it know that this is a team of top performers, but really checking yourself on how can we help them understand that this is like a place that is focused on being the best, but also like we're here to serve people. And again, like if your culture is hyper masculine and you're not open to changing it and like that's how you want it to be, then that's just kind of how it is, right? So I
Right.
think that you're sacrificing some opportunity there of getting to have the gifts that women can bring in. But same thing on the flip side, if there was a culture that's super feminine and we don't want any of that masculine energy, then they're going to sacrifice and lose out on something too. So I think it's about having both. I had one other thought. What was it? So I was just going to say, my friend was telling me a story that resonated with me. She was sharing about a time when her sales coach was giving her feedback, and it was right in front of the team, and it wasn't in that loving manner, right? Like of I want to support you and grow. It was more of like a, hey, you just did this wrong and you need to try harder and you suck. And so it was in front of everybody, and she really left feeling humiliated and discouraged, like most people would. But her guy friend that she was telling the story to responded to that story and was like, yeah, that sucks. But like, didn't it make you, didn't you grow from it? And didn't it make you want to try harder and work harder? And she was like, no, honestly, it made me just shut down. And so I don't know if I can say that that's 100% feminine versus masculine. Maybe it's personality. But I think that that's true. Like I don't necessarily always want to try harder when I get kicked in the butt. Sometimes I want to shut down. So it depends on the person, really.
Yeah, I love. I mean, honestly, you answered a very tough question. I love how you said it because I agree. I think what I'm taking from that is that we need to maybe redefine competition. We need to rethink our definition of what a competitive culture looks like. Because if competitive culture looks like Wolf of Wall Street, then I can say as a very strong alpha male, that's nothing of what I want my life to look like or my culture to look like. But if competition means, and to use your own words, that everyone is becoming the best version of themselves, then hell yeah, sign me up all day. I'm in for that.
Yeah.
Because I don't care if you're man or woman, if you want to be the best version of who you can be and you have impact and that brings you joy and you can have what I call true fun, then let's go. Let's ride. I'm down for anything of that. And I agree. I will say this. I'll go as far as to say this. I've had moments where I have been, berated publicly. I didn't want to try harder. If anything, I wanted to use vengeance and literally make sure, like, if I'm going to try harder, it's because somehow I wanted to destroy you. So, like, I mean, I loved having coaches and football coaches get up in my face. And that was different, or, you're in the weight room and someone's like screaming at you. It's like, I don't know, like, I'm fine with that. But
I think that might be the difference, though. I think that might be the differentiating factor. Maybe there's some women that'll be okay with that, but like overall, not the vibe.
Right, but I'm saying it's also the environment. See, on the football field or in the baseball field or in the gym, in the weight room, appropriate based off of what we're talking about. But in essence, in a business setting, I don't know if that's appropriate. I mean, you can rile people up. And sometimes there might be a male energy or a male in there that needs that. But I would say that I think, at least if it was on my team and I had to, as a leader, give that male that at that moment, I would want to know that every female who was in there felt so safe and secure, and that wasn't the culture at large, but then could be like that was an isolated for that person. That's what they needed. Okay. Now, again, I don't think that we should be berating people, period. I think even that maybe needs to be redefined. Unless how you want that culture. I just think you're gonna
Right.
have
Yeah.
crazy. I just think you're gonna have crazy turnover. And I'm
Yeah.
not
I don't
here.
think anyone responds to it really well.
No, I don't at all. And I think that's one thing I want to see the sales culture in the industry change, is where
Hmm.
people no matter what energy you're using at that moment, that you could um, feel honestly just safe. You feel like it's a
Yeah.
place where you want to be, because that level of conviction,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah. So I've been learning a lot about polyvagal theory and
Mm-hmm.
nervous system, all this cool psychology stuff. And truly, like, if you do not feel safe, you cannot perform at your optimum capacity. You cannot think as clearly. You're not going to be
Yeah.
as creative. You're not going to be as tuned in to what's going on, because you're just like, trying to survive. So it's so important for men and women to feel safe. But going back to just the differences, what I was just thinking of with that whole competition piece is, thinking even like prehistorically, with men being hunters and women being gatherers, the nurturers. If you use that analogy, like, men are going to be the hunter, let's go get it, boom, boom, boom. And women are going to be, all right, I want to nurture the sale. Like, how can I build the relationship with the prospect? How can I really tune into what's going on here emotionally?
Mm-hmm.
So just another way to think about it of, it's not even that we have to change necessarily how we're doing it. It's almost just like the language and the energy of how we're
Yeah.
communicating it. We're all trying to accomplish the same thing, closing the deal and serving someone and helping solve their problem. It's just about how we're communicating, I think, in a lot of ways. And
Mm-hmm.
then definitely just not as many women to learn from in the space, which I don't know what needs to be done about that. I was thinking about that before. And I guess in a lot of ways that would be our fault, right? Like, we as women need to be bolder. I see women struggling with imposter syndrome way more than I do with men. My guy friends don't typically talk
Mm.
about feeling not as qualified, whereas women do. And I think that maybe goes back to the childhood stuff as well. But all that to say that women sales leaders, myself included, like, we've got to take some of the ownership there of really fighting to be more visible and elevate ourselves to have a louder platform and be able to put ourselves in that place where more women can see us, so that they see, hey, this is possible. But I also think it takes guys like you who say, hey, like, how can I help my sisters rise? How can I give them a voice? How can I point out their achievements and wins and really elevate them, not just us having to, climb to the top by ourselves.
Right. Mm-hmm.
So I
Yeah.
appreciate you, having me on the podcast even. It's a huge win.
Oh, yeah. No, I mean, it's funny because if I'm just being fully transparent, like, we got in like 6, 7 episodes, and I was just like, I mean, because when we started it, it was just like this, and I was just trying to grab everybody that I knew in sales real quick to kind of get the ball rolling.
Mm-hmm.
And it was about 6 or
Yeah.
7 in, and I was like, oh shoot, yo, I don't have one female on this freaking podcast right now. And I was
Mm-hmm.
like, and then like at first I like, if because I'll feel conviction on stuff like that. I'm like, how could I not think about that? You know, and I gotta get on to myself about it. But then I'm just
Mm-hmm.
like, you know what? Screw that. I'm not going to do that. I'm just going to go and start putting females on the podcast, and then I'll just fix it real fast by doing that. But it is very true, because I'm very much like, I will always default, probably, but maybe the way that I was raised was like, yo, if you want something out of life, it's based off of what you will do. If you don't
Mm-hmm.
want something out of life, it's based off of what you won't do or what you will do. You have whatever you want or don't have in life because of you and no one else. I
Mm-hmm.
will stand firm on that, because like, I just can't find another reason why, because
Mm-hmm.
the amount of stories that I've heard of,
Yeah.
people who were in a victim setting and absolutely found a way to
Way
rise
out.
above
Mm-hmm.
that, to play out of it, right? But
100%.
but I also believe that when you are in a place of any form of influence and you have any opportunity to have a platform that can impact people, you are responsible for how you handle that platform. Example,
Right.
you feeling a need, a lack in the industry, and then you go and create, which is now this amazing group of women who are just absolutely being connected. I mean, like I asked this question to Aditi, by the way, one of our coaches here and one of our mutual friends. I mean, she had the
Love her.
kind of the same, yeah, absolutely. She's so good. I'm going to say a legend. I know that's kind of outfit, but she is a living legend, and she's awesome. But it's like you took up that mantle, right? Like you bore that weight, and you're like, yo, somebody has to do it. And imagine if you didn't do that. Like there'd be 1,000+ women who would not have had the opportunity to hear from all the great ladies that you have in there, who would have not probably found their place, or if they did, they maybe would have found it later. But on the same thing as men, it's like, hey, it is on us to watch our messaging. It is on us to be like, hey, at least think through. Because if you're going to say, I don't agree to this, but if you are going to say, I want an alpha culture, okay, at least take time to think through that, to know what you want, and then realize what you won't get by doing that. And you have to be okay with that. But on the same aspect, if you say you want change, then you need to start, I think we need to start thinking about that, about what that looks like. I don't know if this is even,
no, 100%. I'm with you 100%. And I think that, I'm with you. It's 100% about personal responsibility and what can we also do to contribute and elevate others. And I do think that discrimination is a real thing, not just sexism with women, but with, race and culture and all the things. I've never been more exposed to it as I have working, in recruiting and connecting people. Yeah. It's not outward discrimination. It's just bias. Like we all grow up with bias. And so men being biased towards other men, women being biased towards other women, or, just being biased towards someone that looks like you or speaks like you, has the same color skin, like it is this natural inclination. And so we really have to work intentionally against it to be able to be inclusive and bring people in. And I know that that's just obviously a very talked about topic in our culture lately, but I think I was definitely guilty of leaning on the side of like, oh yeah, like, well, it's not that bad. It's not that big of a deal. And now as I've seen it more and more, it's like, okay, yeah, I get why it's harder for certain cultures and races to, climb the ladder, and they have to fight for it more than we do necessarily. So I would say too, like, this is a little bit, well, it's not really off topic, but just branching out. I'm a big believer. So I think that in describing like an ideal sales rep, right? Like we want the high DI, right, on the disc profile. We want the Enneagram 8, which I am high DI, Enneagram 8, as are you, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I get it. Aggressive, driven, like let's go get the job done kind of people. But I hate seeing personalities discriminated against too, because I'm a big believer. It wasn't always this way, but when I trained fundraisers, that's where I really saw it first. I really thought, okay, I would have reps come to me and I would be like, yeah, this person's going to crush it. They're so charismatic. They're so well-spoken. They're so driven. It's going to be great. And then they would actually get to the job and they just weren't doing it. They weren't following through or whatever it was. They had too much ego. They were scared to fail, whatever it was. They didn't do as well. And then the people who maybe I thought they were going to crash and burn, there were a few where like literally I'm like, dude, I do not know how this guy is going to raise money. Like, I just don't know how. I don't know how. I'm sure you've had some sales reps come through training where you're like, yeah, I don't know about this guy. But if they put their head down and they learn the skill of understanding human psychology, and they learn the skill of finding out where someone's at, their circumstances, their pain, what they need, their vision, what's the gap between those? How can we help them meet that? How can we help them overcome fear to get to the close, right? Like that is a skill set. So I would just love to see across the board, not only more open-mindedness towards hiring women and bringing women onto sales teams, but open-mindedness in you don't necessarily have to hire an Enneagram 8 high DI. Like, let's focus on the skill set and see if they can actually get the job done, not necessarily like the how of the personality behind it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%. This has actually been really an amazing already. I mean, the time has flown by
It
already,
has.
and I know we got to wrap it up and everything like that. But before we do that, what would be, because we'll make sure that how they can connect with you is in the show notes, and we'll talk about that here in a second. What would be parting words to the female about like how amazing this space is, or what would you say to them if they were wanting to get into this industry? And then B, what would also be kind of your wrapped up parting words to the men in this industry or the leaders? Because I want to end on that note.
Mm, yeah, great question. So to the women, I think just really looking to each other to learn from each other, because I think we are the first to go by the most, the most recent ad that we saw run through our news feed for some sales training, and it usually is men. And so maybe we as women need to really double down on elevating other women in the space and learning from them. I don't know if that's a perfect solution, but could help. And I think just creating more community, even beyond what we have, like 1,000 women is great, but gosh, you probably have Facebook groups with 16,000 salesmen in them, right?
Right.
It's not anything crazy. So really continuing to have community and not being afraid to have conversations with the people in your actual real life too, and inviting them into it, right? Like advocating for sales. So quick story on this. I had a friend who started a business, and it's a great business. It's a little shop, and they do boutique clothing, that kind of stuff. But man, it's hard to turn a profit when you're doing a product-based business, right?
Yeah.
And the whole reason for her starting the business was to make more money for her family and spend more time with her kids. She is not making any more money for her family, and she is spending less time with her kids because of this business. And it's great if that's like your passion project and you love it, go for it. But I was like, you know what? I really did her a disservice by not telling her about how great sales can be, and that it doesn't have to be this like slimy thing, and that she can actually find something that she really loves and go out and connect with people and build relationships and sell something and have a really good time doing it and make more money and spend time with her family. Because she's not, we're not doing women any favors by letting them go do their 18 different MLM hustles. And the reality is they could focus on a sales job and really be fulfilled and be a part of a great team. Not that there's anything wrong with it, but you get my point, right?
Oh, yeah.
So I think that the more that we can help women see sales as an option is going to be a great starting point. And then for men, really the same thing, right? Just encourage women that they can be great salespeople. They don't have to do it the manly men way,
Right.
But elevate your sisters and do what you can to give us a hand up in that. And like let's all just be brothers and sisters to each other.
Yeah. Super. Absolutely legend. Thank you so much for just hopping on here and honestly really talking about things that really aren't talked about that much, and being open and transparent, because I know what you're doing. You can hang with anyone. So this ain't, you know what I mean? So to hear your
I
perspective
love
is
hanging with the
absolutely
boys.
Yeah, for true. So, just so if anybody wants to jump out, whether anybody wants to get, because I know that you've also helped, get men placed and recruited
Oh yeah,
as well.
absolutely.
So, like, you can do either. How would people get in contact with you if they want to know more about what you're doing, or even the ladies that want to join
Yes.
your community?
So, ladies, sorry, men, this is not for you, but ladies would love to have you join the Sales Queen Sisterhood. So, it's facebook.com/Sales Queen Sisterhood. And you can also find me on Facebook, Kelsey O'Neill. It's Oneal. We'll have it linked in the show notes. And really, Facebook DMs is the best place to get me. Like, I love Instagram. You can find me there too, but Facebook DMs all day long.
Nice, love it. Thank you for your time. Full Stack Crew, as always, guys, we're grateful for you. I will say this as many times as I have to, but we do not monetize this show, because we really just wanted to create a place where you could come, learn, get what you need, and then get on. The only thing we've ever asked, and to my knowledge, the only thing that we will ever ask, is simply share it. if you could just share this, if you got something out of it, if you know somebody that is in this space and you're like, oh my God, this episode would just have so much impact on their lives and where they're at and speak to where what season they're in, then please, all we ask is that you guys share it and give an opportunity for someone to have the same understanding and revelation that you're having in this night. Until next time, we are grateful for you. Check out all the show notes so you can really get in touch with Kelsey. And then Kelsey, thank you so much for your time. Just grateful to have you. And
Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Until next time, guys, we'll see y'all.